Hey, what's up, YouTube? Belton here. We're going to be presenting you guys with something a little bit different today. I'm sure most of you have heard about this big economic quote unquote issue that's going on. There's a lot of content creators covering it, saying that it's the end of the league economy. A lot of sort of calamitous end of the world sort of assumptions here. People, I think. Unfairly representing a situation that they don't understand or have a proper context to understand or speak to with respect to their understanding of PoE's economy. And more so than that, I've noticed quite a few people have been assigning, motivations and the people that they see to be at fault. A lot of people have been ascribing a certain amount of toxicity or an insidious and malicious nature to that group, and I think that's unfair. And so, what we're going to be doing today is I've got a hold of the people that were quote unquote responsible for this, and we're going to let them tell you guys firsthand what happened, how they came across it, what their net results were from that. What happened on the back end with GGG from the horse's mouth. And I'm just going to let those guys tell you that story. And then within the expertise that I have in this game, after they present that, I'm going to distill that down, show some historical data, give some relevant facts about the league economy, and discuss whether or not this is as big of an issue as people are saying it is, where I think the actual fault lies or where fault lies in these situations, why they seemingly keep happening, and where we should go on from there. So with that being said, I don't want to take up too much of the time. We've got three of the gentlemen here on Discord. You guys want to say hello?
Hey guys, hey Belton.
Hey, and before these guys start going, as a disclaimer, I do have a personal relationship with many of the people. The three on the voice call. How many of the guys in the guild in your guild do you think I know? Several, I would imagine, right?
Yeah, more than half for sure.
More than half, yeah. So these guys, just before you think I'm playing favoritism, they were all in my guild at some point back in the day, and they abandoned the goat. So I have a lifelong grudge against all of them, and I wish ill upon them all. However, one must be objective and honest in situations like this, and I do think that things are being painted unfairly. I don't. There is no. We don't do any mirror crafting projects together. There is no splitting of currency. There is no kind of in-game collusion whatsoever. However, we do have for several years within PoE, I do know these guys, but in no way will that have any bearing on what they're saying. And I have no horse in this race. In fact, I was actually sleeping when all this came about. So, with that preface being said, I'll pass it on to you guys. If you could maybe just let them know what it is that happened.
Yeah. Well, I'm Cardpender, the one of the banned accounts that was paraded around Reddit. I can tell you guys a little bit about how exactly everything went down. So, our group decided to do a group league start this league. We leveled Friday, Saturday did some basic typical group start, and that's when one of our members first got the find the stack of divination cards Kirak mission on Ancient City. That led us to see that on the white maps we're able to basically block many of the cards that are available on the map on the atlas. So for the case of Ancient City, that was a guaranteed stack of Humility for a Tabula, or a guaranteed stack of Unrequited Love for 19 Mirror Shards. By that point, we were too far into the atlas to have a completed atlas with only Ancient City. With only Ancient City undone. So we were exploring different ways of using card blocking to basically get more currency in the game. That's when we started looking at different maps on the atlas and stumbled upon Burial Chambers, which basically had 4 cards with the Brother's Gift card available at all levels, and every other card being blocked at map tier 2 and above. So with this in mind, we thought of using the scribe mechanic that was introduced to the game in this league, and swap Burial Chambers into a T1 map, which would allow us to basically run that map at T1 and block every other scarab.
Here, Carpenter, can I pause you for a sec just so we can give them some context here. So basically, for anyone that is unaware of this, divination cards, what you guys discovered is that similar to like certain vol corrupted implicits or modifier tiers on a piece of armor if you're crafting them. For divination cards, if you go look up a map on like the wiki, divination cards are tied to certain maps, correct? And most maps have several cards that can drop on them. However, because with the void stones, you can get, you know, a tier 1 map to go up to like a T16 map with 4 void stones, right? And so if you're doing low tier maps, even though the overall map says that it's possible to get 5 different divination cards there, sometimes you need to have the higher tier version of that map to have that full access to them, right? So similar to, would you say this is an apt comparison? If you get like an item level 1 chest and then corrupt that, you know, instead of having 20 possible corrupted implicits, you only have 5 of them, right? So you're limiting the pool. And then the scrying, sorry, what was it called again? The scrying orb?
It's the Nameless Seer. It has a scry a map feature.
Nameless Seer, okay. I'm just going to show that on the video here on the wiki page, just so that there's a Nameless Seer. So Nameless Seer was the one who was at this league, and what was the effect that he was allowed to do?
You're able to swap the divination card offered on the map with another map.
Okay. Yeah, so in that case, you would find typically the point of that, I guess, from the baseline would be if you have a really good divination card, but it's on a terrible layout like dungeon or whatever, you could theoretically put it onto something like Strand where it's more favorable, and you would run it over and over, right? But what
Absolutely.
but what you guys discovered was that you could also move the item level minimums that were required typically for the better cards, or sometimes they had. They didn't have an item level requirement. If you move those around to the appropriately tiered map, you could limit the possible pool of cards that were available. Is that
yeah, exactly.
Fair summary? Okay, great. Continue. Sorry, I just wanted to provide that context in case people didn't understand how that worked.
That sounds good. At this point, well, we've basically thought that we've discovered a good way of using the mechanic to create currency, and now we have a couple of problems that we need to solve. Firstly, we need to prove that using the divination scarab of plenty, I believe is what it's called. That is a scarab that basically buffs 3 packs in the map and forces them to drop one of the divination cards associated with the map. We need to prove that using that scarab would actually override any card weightings on the map and be able to drop it regardless of how rare the card is. We need to figure out a way to get the Seer on a burial chamber and swap that with Siege. And we need to find a way to get that many burial chamber maps.
Sorry, I'll give you a little context moment there. Basically what he's saying is that if you put a really, really good House of Mirrors onto a really good map layout, the problem is that House of Mirrors is still like an impossible to find card. So is that really giving much of a benefit? However, the name of the divination card again was what? Sorry, the divination card or divination
Scarab of Plenty.
Of Plenty, and this was one that they added this league, correct?
Yes.
Right. So this was a brand new added scarab, right? And you can see here up to 3 packs of magic monsters in an area drop additional divination cards. So it's not a probability to drop it, it's a guarantee. And as they were mentioning earlier, since divination cards have a minimum or minimum item level requirement for the zone, essentially if you can find a very rare card and get it so that you can assign that to a good layout and make it, regardless if that's an incredibly, let's say in a normal circumstance, it would take 1,000 maps to find one of them. Because they introduced this new scarab that guarantees that it'll drop a divination card. However, since you're able to switch the location of divination cards from their localized map to whatever map you chose, you can force it essentially. If there's only one option for, if the only card that can drop in that map is a very good one, the fact that they also did that with the addition of this new scarab means that the only cards that could drop and are guaranteed to drop would be that very expensive one. And I must say, not to clout the opinion of anyone watching this, that is an incredibly clever use of a mechanic that they introduced themselves. That is something that when I first heard that, my first reaction was, "Fuck! I wish I thought of that." not fuck. These guys are cheaters. And I think going into their further explanation, I think most people should perhaps introspect and consider the fact that you would probably share that same view. All right, go ahead.
So yeah, this is about Saturday night when we discovered the strategy. We instantly started having several people running T16 burial chambers with whatever maps we have to try to find Seer. But at this point, we were still not confident that this Divination Scarab of Plenty would work in the way that we had theorized. So that's basically when we ended the night. And Sunday morning, we decided to go on a standard testing spree. 3 of our members logged into standard on our GigaFast characters and basically blasted standard burial chambers maps on T16 for a little over an hour.
Yeah, and what's the significance of burial chambers?
Yeah, so for scrying a map, you must run it on the exact map that you want to get the divination card for. So if we want to replace Siege with burial chambers, you need to run T16 burial chambers.
Okay, which card was it from? Because I just have the list up of divination cards here.
Burial chambers has the Brothers gift card.
Oh, that's funny. The wiki doesn't even
That
have.
list has changed in the new league.
Yeah.
Oh wait, no, that's a new edition. Okay.
Yeah.
And what? Okay, and what's the significance of the siege map?
The siege map is the T1 map with the best layout.
Okay.
Essentially.
Cool.
We don't want to run it on Bone Crypt.
Okay, Roger. All right, good. Sorry, go ahead. Continue.
So yeah, it took us a little over 30 minutes, an hour on our standard characters, blasting like 1-minute maps to find the Seer, and we were able to scry it onto Siege in standard. Running the map with Divination Scarab of Plenty on standard in T1 Siege, that allowed us to finally prove that the strategy is working, and now we're on full go mode in League. So now the gold
at this point, what was the how much was a Divination Scarab of Plenty and that stuff? Was this just something that was a completely untapped market at this point, or
essentially these Divination Scarab of Plenty is about like 10 chaos at this point.
Okay.
I believe it's a fairly common scarab, as we were opening some veiled scarabs in standard and we're able to get this pretty consistently.
Yeah, no, but I guess my point in asking that was I remember some people mentioning that at a certain point, I'm guessing that it was this scarab got so incredibly expensive just because the upside was so high. But when you guys started doing it was
we never needed to buy it for over 20 chaos basically.
Right. So what that would indicate is that you guys came across this honestly and you just found a cool mechanical interaction. It wasn't like when people found out about the 6 links on Squire shields where everyone's like, abuse it quick, abuse it early, right? Because if you're buying a single scarab for like 40 divs, you probably know that you're doing something illegitimate, right? But you guys just discovered something essentially. Okay, cool. Continue.
Yeah. Now the focus is to finally secure that Seer in League on a burial chamber. So from what we found, a nameless Seer is probably about 1% spawn chance in any T16 map, maybe a little lower. And given that it's Sunday in a new league, there were basically 0 burial chambers for sale. And so we split up into, I'd say, 4 groups from our main group. One group was a 2-man running juiced map finding, printing burial chambers and grotto for the other groups, with the other 3 members speed running burial chambers.
Okay.
It took about 4 to 5 hours of running this before one of our members finally secured a Seer on a burial chambers, and we swapped that with Siege and began our in-league use of the mechanic.
So at this point, how many people did you guys have working together towards this goal now?
At this point, about 6 people.
6 people. And at any point in that discussion, did you guys feel like you were, was your outlook on it, wow, we just discovered like this crazy thing that nobody else has? Or did you guys feel like you had found an exploit and you were going to try and keep it low key?
I mean, basically, I mean, every league, GGG is introducing new items and scarabs. It's basically introducing like a set of rules for us, and our job as players is to make the most currency within those rules.
Yeah. I mean, even if you did feel like it was probably something that was too overpowered, if you use a frame of reference or historical context. Last league, the same thing happened. What, 4 separate times that they patched out, and in those cases, it was very much the indication on their part, at least from how I perceived it. Now, obviously, I'm not a huge mapper myself, but nobody got banned in those situations, from what I remember. Nobody was punished for it. And as far as I recall, the league mantra became abuse early, abuse often. So even if it was a situation, I suppose, where your outlook was one where you thought this was maybe something that was, too strong or whatever. Historically, they the messaging on their side was, if you were the one to discover this, you're going to reap the rewards of it. So I don't even necessarily think that's a bad thing, which is important, I think, for people to know too. Right. Sorry, go ahead.
I think in general, in a game like PoE, if you're the first to discover a strategy, you're going to be making like unreasonable amounts of currency. So, anyways, so yeah, we began to start running these divination scarabs of plenty on T1 Siege and trying to maximize the amount of currency we get out of this strategy. So, if you read the scarab, it says up to 3 packs of magic monsters in area drop additional divination cards.
Yep.
So every monster in this pack has a chance to drop a divination card associated with the map, regardless of rarity. This means that the vectors to scale it is not quantity, rarity, or anything like that. It's pack size.
Okay. Can I ask you one question here? Because I'm holding Alt on Siege map right here, and it says Broken Promises requires map tier 13 plus. And the trial requires map tier 10 plus, but the side quest and home, neither of those have any indication on them. Were those 2 cards still able to drop? Like, was the one that you guys were farming the only possible card, or was it just one of?
It was the only possible card. Once you swap it with Burial Chambers, it no longer keeps any of its current cards.
Oh, so all the 4 that are presented with Siege map get removed. Okay, yes, that makes sense.
They're completely overwritten.
Completely overwritten. Okay. And what are the because sorry, it's not I as you guys probably know, I don't clear my atlas until like the last week of the league. What are the cards that are available on the Burial Chambers and their item levels? If one of you is in game. Oh, actually, I guess you're not in game. What a dumb question.
None of us are in game, unfortunately.
Okay, so here we go, guys. So the Burial Chamber card availabilities are the Brawny Battle Mage, which is T13 plus, the Cursed Words, which is T5 plus, the Thaumatage, I'm saying that word wrong, T2 plus, and then Brother's Gift, which was the big boon here for you guys, right? And that's the 1 card gives 5 divines, and that does not have an item level. Okay. All right, cool. And sorry to keep interjecting in the middle of your explanations here. I just know that a lot of people are probably completely ignorant of these things, so just maybe to give some context for them. Please continue.
So yeah, since it's not affected, the divination card drops are not affected by quantity or rarity at all. The only vector to scale this was pack size. So we began using the new pack size scarab, the new pack size chisel on our T1 maps of Siege, and corrupting them for 8 mod for more pack size scaling. We were able to get probably 70 to 80% pack size on each of our maps.
Yeah. And what was the scarab setup that you were using? So you had the Scarab of Plenty you mentioned. What else was the?
Yeah. So Scarab of Plenty, we were also using Monstrous Lineage for scaling more magic pack size. That is the 40%.
Oh, that's the gray one, right? The.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Monstrous Lineage and okay, it's not. Oh, there it is, Monstrous Lineage. And what were the other ones?
And we're also using Hunted Traders to guarantee that there are enough magic packs to be buffed.
Hunted Traders. Scarab of Hunted Traders. Okay.
Yep.
And so it was Hunted.
Or Bloodline Scarab, not the the Bloodline Scarab, I think.
Bloodline Scarab.
That's 150% increased magic monsters.
Okay.
Horn Scarab of Bloodlines, I think.
Oh yeah, Horn Scarab of Bloodlines. Yeah, 150% magic monsters. That's four.
Yep.
And that was the last one.
And the final Scarab is the Divination Scarab of Pilfering to double all of our Divination cards on top of that.
And Pilfering. So that one reads, divination cards which drop an area are stolen by final map boss. That final map boss becomes more difficult and deals increased damage. The more divination cards they have stolen, that final map boss duplicates all stolen divination cards when defeated. Maybe you could explain how that works, because even for myself, that is incredibly convoluted.
Basically, every card that drops in the map, it doesn't drop, but the boss drops 2 of it. So...
Oh, so like if I didn't have that Scarab on, I killed a magic pack, that pack would have dropped that. If you have this Scarab on instead, that magic pack would not drop it. The boss would drop 2. So it just doubles the amount of Scarabs then.
Exactly.
Or sorry, the amount of divination cards.
The amount of divination cards.
Okay. And obviously on a tier 1 map, the difficulty that would increase it by was probably no problem, I imagine, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And so at this point, you had sort of figured it out, and you've got the tier 1s, and so with like the to be able to scry with the T16 to move that over, is that just something you have to do once, or do you have to constantly rerun the T16 to get that over and over?
For each account, you only need to do it once.
So what do you mean for each account? Like for everyone that wanted to run it out of their own hideout, or
Exactly. So
okay. Where you
if
got
you scry it, it only applies to your own atlas and your own kills. So we.
Well, so sorry, clarifying that. Even if you're in somebody else's map.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
okay.
We had a,
Yeah, okay. Sorry. Elaborate on that, because that's such an interesting point.
we had a test where the member who scried the map was running it, and I joined the map as well and killed some of the packs that would drop the divination cards.
Yep.
And the packs that I killed, the divination cards that it dropped were not Brothers Gifts, but the original card drops of the Siege.
Wow.
So scry only applies to the member who scried it. And this kill applies beyond maps opened.
Wow, that's a fascinating, not fascinating in like a cool way, but just a weird choice on their part. Normally, it's like when you think of things like beast farming and stuff like that, it's always like a map wide. Interesting. Wow. So, did you guys determine? I imagine you probably would have tested both ways. Were you guys doing this? Was it better to do like 6 people in one map and get that additional quantity, or did you guys do like 6 people running it one at a time, each individually?
Well, the quantity actually doesn't apply to divination cards.
Oh, it's pack size. You said, right? Okay.
It's only pack size.
Okay.
So we basically optimized for a speed clearing build that could run it as fast as possible, while the other members in the team were securing more resources.
Okay. Great. That's smart, man. I mean, it's by and large. I mean, like for myself, obviously I haven't done this exact thing, but it doesn't sound too different than what I do with Harvest Memories, right? Where I get other people or when I'm mirror crafting, right? It's just allowing the totality to become greater than the sum of its parts. From what I can see here, and again, I haven't done it myself, I understand the outcome ended up being quite high, but there's nothing. Actually, I suppose I should pose this as a question. At any point, was there anything that you did that was like, there was like an actual bug in a thing, or was it just overlooked interactions on their part that they didn't realize would work so well together?
Yeah, I don't think at any point were we actively thinking we just abused the bug. Seeing the cards drop definitely felt not correct.
Yeah, but not on the
much currency from one map.
No, not on the outcome itself, but I mean like like for example, there've been people in the past before where it's like if you drop something or if you click something in a certain order, it would basically like duplicate it, which was an entirely unintended consequence. And I think that's dramatically different than them adding this entirely new system of scarabs and not testing enough to see how they would interact with one another, right? And so and again, I don't want to speak for you, but by going through this with you right now, it looks like everything was working as intended. It's just that they didn't think of all the ways that these could possibly overlap with one another. Or was there ever a point where something like it seemed like it was an actual error? Like for example, last league being able to get a 6 link on a shield, that was something that was pretty obvious that it was not working as intended. it seemed like somebody had just forgot to put like a closed bracket on the end of like roll max sockets on a string of code, right? But in this case here, it just looks like you guys by and large just saw something that they have introduced, noticed it, a cool way to possibly test it, did the legwork, got a group of people together to take advantage of it, and then as intended. Like, I guess that's the important part here, is that this, from my perspective, is that everything that I'm seeing looks like it was working as intended. It's just GGG's perspective of what was intended wasn't well, like on the back end, wasn't tested well enough.
Not well tested.
Yeah, like it was like again. I know you mentioned when you saw them dropping in such great quantities, you probably felt like, oh, okay, maybe we're this is not what they were desiring here. But was there ever a time when you were going through this where you were like, that shouldn't work that way? Like, this is definitely something that is not.
No, I mean, everything we did and every interaction we used was basically working exactly how the interaction should work.
Yeah.
It's just that specific combination that we found that seems to be surpassing what GGG wants for the game.
Okay. All right. Cause that's an important. There have been lots of things historically in the time that I've played PoE that have been somewhat game breaking because of a knowledge asymmetry that existed between an in group and an out group. It's the case with crafting. It's been the case, like, I don't know if any of you played 10 years ago, but the fact that you could do like can't roll attack mods and force +1 socketed gems to like a +3 bow. That was something that like 99.9% of the player base didn't know, and when that became public, it like literally blew people's minds. Again, it was something that was intended. It was just a certain group had put in the legwork to gain an asymmetrical advantage in understanding a certain mechanic. And I think for myself, you guys probably know I've been a pretty diehard critic of groups like TFT and people that I think are RMTing or trading through illegitimate means, almost unapologetically. And I was distinctly hit with a different feeling seeing this, because even though the outcome is obviously one that is very great, and we can discuss what the ramifications of that would be when we go into further specifics. But when you make something and it is working as intended, and the player's responsibility is to engage with, like, it's a PvE game, right? And the E is designed by GGG. The player is responsible for the player. GGG creates a set of challenges, and it's the player's responsibility to try and overcome those challenges within the systems that GGG sets up. And if the fault is on GGG's part for putting in a system that was too strong, are you going to punish players because they're more clever than you are? Or because you didn't put enough work? Like, to me, that seems just... I can understand, again, when you look at the outcome, why there might be some sort of feeling of a punitive measure, but that feels, again, it feels like it's retaliatory, not necessarily like it's based on proper intent, because you're doing, like, when I saw this, again, my first reaction was, damn, I wish I thought of that, right? It wasn't, oh, these guys are fucking cheaters. It seems manifestly unjust to me. And again, I said I wouldn't try to color with my opinions here, but as you're going through this and explaining and showing this to me, I actually think this is bordering on the realm of absurd. But anyways, please continue.
Yeah, I mean, for us as players, I don't think it's our responsibility to think that what we're doing is too profitable if we're not doing anything that's outside of normal game interaction.
Well, I mean, the thing is, too, like, I saw your guild stash here, and we could show that on stream. I personally have made 141 mirrors in a day before from mirror services, which I suspect is more than you guys made in the day that you were doing this as a guild. And it's not like there was ever any, like, balking of the eye there. Like, obviously, that had a disproportionate impact on the economy, and, like, the outcome is great there, but, like, think about the fact TFT for like 3 years owned literally every single mirror item. They had a vertically integrated supply chain where they controlled the material markets vis-a-vis the distribution and the sale of these items. They regulated this because they could put people on blacklists, and they controlled the end state, like entirely monopolizing the entire system of trade in the game. And that doesn't give them an unfair advantage. They're not using something leveraging there. I just think again, the outcome being the sole focus without looking at the historical lens with which they've acted on these things previously, and B, assigning fault where it lies. And if I can be candid about this, and I don't know if you guys feel the same way, and maybe hot take here, I think GGG has, for about the last year or so, kind of abandoned a lot of what their kind of core philosophy with the game has always been in anticipation of PoE 2. For most leagues that they've had in the past, if you had a very big power creep league, the next league would it wouldn't be added to the core game, and then they would have a next league with like nerfs. And right, so you have the player numbers go up and down and blah blah blah, but you had this general sort of baseline in terms of expectation of player power. And like ever since like Crucible League, it was like, okay, we're going to introduce a league mechanic where every single weapon and shield that has ever existed is now completely worthless. And then we're going to add a league where there are so many mirrors being added that the price of everything is going to go up 16 times higher than it's ever been. Then we're going to add a crafting mechanic where if you just follow a spreadsheet within day 2 or 3, you can have a 61 item. And then we're going to introduce a league with all these. And there's none of this step back. And I love GGG as a company, but to me it seems like they know that PoE 2 is coming out, and players historically, whenever they've nerfed things or reeled things in, the player numbers drop. As you guys probably know, Necropolis was literally the worst retention, like the player retention was the worst ever. And this is the last league, I believe, before the beta goes live for that game, right? And so it's not, especially with all the other things they're introducing, I don't think it's unfair to assume that they want people to be incredibly excited. They want people to be having fun. They want to introduce as many things to keep people playing as long as they can, so that enthusiasm carries on into PoE 2. And like the game be kind of damned, right? For me, again, for the last year, it's felt like that baseline that they established for 10 years in terms of putting things up and down. It just like it's obviously not sustainable infinitely to make every league power creep. But if you have an exit strategy, right, where you're anticipating 90% of your players leaving when PoE 2 comes out, that's not that big of a deal. But when you have like that as being sort of an underpinning philosophy, there's things that are going to fall through the cracks. Like last league, again, I don't Magic Find, so it didn't impact me that much, but that was absolutely ridiculous based on how they've acted historically. How many times was it last league where they hotfixed something, had no ramifications, and they allowed people to find didn't FUB gun MF 10 mirrors in a single day? I know I made 25 6-link shields or whatever, and I actually made a YouTube video the second I found out about it, telling everyone to go and do it, because a lot of times whenever there's one of these quote-unquote exploits, GGG, the cult of personalities that exist in PoE, people will take a streamer or they'll take somebody and they'll either canonize them or they'll villainize them. And rather than looking at the fact that, hey, this thing has come into place and is an issue because there wasn't an adequate amount of testing done, and perhaps, I'm not saying you should thank the players that took advantage of this, but that's literally their role. You know what I mean? It's like, it's a misassigning of blame, but it's a lot easier to grab a pitchfork than it is to say, hey, perhaps there's a philosophical underpinning that is allowing the quality assurances here or the testing to be to fall through the cracks and to have a lower standard than it has in the past. And I mean, the fact that last league that happened numerous times, and the fact that they set a precedent by not only usually if they have something that's where it's super powerful, they let it stay for the league and they remove it, right? Last league, as far as I can remember, was the first time that they allowed certain people to keep the outcome of something and then just kind of screwed off the rest of the player base. I think that was one of the primary reasons why a lot of people left. But then they also didn't punish anyone. And so if you engage with that mechanic again in the exact same way, where it is working as intended, it's just that their back-end testing or their quality assurance wasn't thorough enough to find the overlapping ways in which this could be done in a positive fashion, to set the precedent that you did last league, not just one time, not twice, not 3 times, but like 4 times, and then act like you have these, not patsies, but these people that you can throw off to the side, and instead of having the player base that is, you kind of need to keep docile and excited for this new release, and you can get them to turn their ire towards this group of people who are, they're the ones who are ruining the game. They want to take the economy from you, whatever. I just think it's a very naive and sort of patronizing way to approach things. And to be clear, I think that you guys probably knew. I think I know you guys as players, and I know you're all capable and smart. I'm sure you guys probably knew this is definitely something that's at least going to get patched. This is maybe like teetering a gray area here. But I also know that you guys are smart enough and have played the game long enough to know that, hey, when you guys trade mirror items or anything of high value, when you see like a level 29 unascended witch, and from like a Korean account that has no challenges done or whatever, and like he comes to buy a mirror item, you're probably like, okay, I recognize that this is probably someone's RMT throwaway account. Like that's a pretty pervasive thing that exists in PoE. You don't see people playing on like Card Pen. How old was your account?
Well, I'm actually pretty new. I started playing Arch Nemesis.
Arch Nemesis. And Brahman, how old's yours?
2020, I think, but 4 years.
4 years. And Desi, is Desi still in the call?
Probably more like 8 years plus.
8 years plus. So, what I can't really rectify is that, like, if you truly did think these people should be, should be crucified to set like to send a message about taking advantage of systems we put in the game. Do you really think that people who were acting in bad faith in that situation, or in a way where they didn't, why would you do it on your 3-year account, your 8-year account? I'm sure you guys have paid money for stash tabs and stuff like that, and supporter packages or whatever, right? Like it just doesn't line up to me, and I think that it is manifestly unfair to have that kind of duality. Like the fact that the 26,000, in fact, I have this in my hideout. The fact that this chess piece still exists in the game, which is far stronger than pretty much anything else. But like the quivers that were there last league, people were calling for the heads to roll on that case, and they decided to roll those ones back. In Sentinel or not in Sentinel League, in Crucible League, you were able to add an Abyss socket to items and then get rid of, to keep the Abyssal Jewel socket, but you could get rid of the suffix. I have several of those. Those still exist. And then last league, they get rid of them and they roll it back. Nobody gets punished in any of those cases. And the items are still allowed to exist. Then last league, similar to what you guys are doing, because they overhauled the entire Scarab system and the entire, what were the things called before the, I should have mapped more. Sexton system. Obviously, that's a huge change to the game. And naturally, there's going to be some things that need to be adjusted in that case and perhaps play tested better. But to act like that, players who are doing their duty as a player, which is to find out the best ways to interact with the environment that they design and that they put forth towards you, is somehow worse than people who are creating one-of-a-kind bugged items that can be mirrored infinitely, that can never be beat by someone else, and therefore they have cornered a certain if you have a pair of boots that has a bug socket on it, it's like that is forever going to be better than any other pair of boots because it can't compete with that fact that that's still there, right? And the fact that mirror markets are zero-sum games, it's like that is a far greater advantage and that is a far greater detriment to the game at large than somebody in a flash of a pan taking advantage of a system that exists. That is my view on it. And that's not like a tacit endorsement of what you guys did. And frankly, in my self-interest, I was like, until I saw who it was, I kind of breathed a sigh of relief because I was very concerned that, and we could go into the numbers in a moment, but if you were making, I heard people reporting that you guys were making 1,000 divs an hour, and that I remember looking last night, that would have been able to be 7 mirrors, or if you wanted to, like 700 Vivid Vultures an hour. And it's like I've spent the last 35 hours farming Vivid Vultures so that I could try and start a mirror craft. In my mind, I was like, damn, if these guys decide to buy Vultures, I am fucked. Because mirror crafts, once a perfect one's made, there's no reason to do another one, right? And so selfishly on my end, I was like, yeah, okay, they're banned. But then I thought about it for a second. I was like, no, that's not really fair because last league, I literally put out a video showing an exploit and encouraging people to do it because I was tired of them having situations where they scapegoat somebody else. And I think that's why I had such a strong reaction to this, was that literally last league, nobody was punished at all for the socket thing. but it was in part because thousands of people did it because people showcased it to a large audience. However, in the past, they actually banned Empyrean because he showed it to a large audience. And so the fact that there's these mixed signals being given in almost every situation is obviously very hard to follow in terms of how to act as a player, because if you don't act and you know it exists, right? If they allowed those currency items or that item base to stay in the game, and you knew that you could have done it, if you're someone like myself who wants to mirror craft and there's a bugged base, if I don't do that and they allow that base to stay in the game, I've fucked myself forever, right? And if I do it, I risk getting banned. It's a lose-lose situation, right? And unless you have a clear guideline on how you're going to act, and you universally have a set of rules that applies to every single person in one of those situations, and you clearly define what is an exploit and what are the ramifications for those exploits. For example, if you have a situation like what you guys have, where you could have, you can email GGG and say, hey, is this working as intended? Or, showcasing it to an audience to what extent it's done. But if you keep having these flip-flopping narratives where seemingly the only thing that has dictated whether or not they've acted has been public outcry. And I'm sorry, but that is just ridiculous. Because, again, the fact that a mob mentality surrounds based on how sensationalized the situation is not a satisfactory predicate for whether something is breaking in terms of service or not. And even though, again, I literally was terrified of the fruits of your guys' labor, I have to say that I believe with every ounce of my soul that is a manifestly unjust way for a company to apply its own terms of service, not only in this situation, but going forward, because it doesn't give any clear signal, and these things are going to keep happening unless they change what needs to be changed, and that's twofold. One, they either need to have like some kind of beta testing that's open to players that are maybe a bit more creative than their playtesters are, or spend a longer time doing it, or two, they need to have a universal set of rules that either applies or does not apply, that they can point to, sort of like a constitutional guideline at these moments where they're like, here's the term of service term that you broke, and here's the punishment for it. Otherwise, this will not stop. And the fact that 2 days ago, this was probably the biggest hype I'd seen for any league ever. Everyone was so excited, whatever. And then I go on my computer this morning, and I see people who don't even really play PoE, like Sir Gog, making a PowerPoint presentation about an economy he's never been involved with, saying that like it's the end of the trade league, and 40,000 people are watching it, and like this doom and gloom mentality takes hold, and there's really no understanding of that. And again, it's a lot easier for someone who's ignorant in these situations to grab a pitchfork and say, let's kill that guy, than it is to say, hey, what are the underlying causality issues here that are allowing these situations to happen, and not only happen, but seemingly happen with increased frequency, and with increased effect, because it's not the player's responsibility to act with the consideration of the game at large. Like every player is responsible for every player, right? Like every single one of you that's in this call, I imagine you want to make the strongest character that you can because you're motivated by your own like self-interest. You might work in a group, but working in a group is because the totality is better than the sum of its parts. I know for a fact. Yeah, like I know for a fact when I buy something, and I'm like, ooh, this was a cheap buy. Like I'm excited. I'm not sitting there being like, damn, what's the long-term ramifications for, the first-term player? Should I perhaps sit there and give him a coaching session on why itemization works? It's like, no, I'm excited because I got something cheaper than I could have made it for, right? I mean, the game is competitive in that sense, and the fact that seemingly what the message that they're presenting is that every single player should be responsible for the macro considerations of an economy, that by their own volition and their own words was that this is going to be a largely experimental league with a lot of new systems in place that are going to be like a little wonky or whatever, right? And it's like, if you're going to say that in your own presentation of a league material, to me what that said was not an admission of guilt on their part, but them saying, hey, we're maybe introducing a ton of things that we haven't maybe fully had the time to test in every single scenario, so there's probably going to be some wild stuff happening. I actually remember explicitly at League Start saying that's actually a very telling sentence, because keep in mind how many issues there were in Necropolis that we just talked about. The fact that they're going through a league where they had to have 5 active hotfixes, and they're referring to this league as experimental, like, damn, this is going to be the Wild West. To me, that doesn't signal, all right, guys, be on your best behavior. Don't try to explore any new mechanics. Don't you dare try to think of something that's more clever than we thought of. And if you do, we're going to ban you because there's a public outcry driven by people that don't really understand, A, the ramifications of these things, or B, the historical context of for which we've acted in the past. And I'm sorry that I just went on that monologue for 15 minutes cutting you off, but this is actually making me sort of angry hearing you guys talk about this because it's very hypocritical for the situations I've seen happen in the past.
For us, we don't want to speculate or point fingers at GGG. What happened definitely was unfortunate, but
yeah, no, I mean that's not.
We'll see what they decide to say.
Yeah, I mean that's not your role to point fingers, but I'm a neutral party in this, and so I will. Because I can say it for myself, and this is irrespective of the guys on the Discord call. People on my Twitch chat, you'll know this. Be dealing with the bureaucrats and stuff that I do. I would say probably 15 to 20% of all trades that I have above, let's say, 300 divines, I have a very, very high suspicion are illegitimate, being done on like an RMT account or a throwaway account or whatever. For multiple years, I've taken screenshots of these and sent them to GGG, being like, hey, this account's cheating, this person's breaking TOS, this person's botting. And in many cases, these have fallen on deaf ears. Recently, they actually did ban someone for it. But I've had these conversations with them before, and these are clear as day rules that are written there themselves, right? Last league, right? The lowest league retention of all time was largely caused by similar issues to this. And I just think it's very important outside, and not to be dismissive of what happened to you guys as individuals, but for the sanctity of the game and for like the well-being of the game, this can't keep happening because it is unconscionable to think that you're entering a lose-lose scenario constantly, where the more you push yourself, like, okay, am I at risk of finding something very clever? Like, where do you cross the line, right? Like, am I going to get banned because I decided to spend extra hours, like, looking into a new league mechanic and just to find out GGG didn't playtest on their back end, and because there's a public outcry, I could potentially get banned? Like, to me, that message is contrary to what they want. People should be... Go ahead.
Why don't they have a PTR? Because, I mean, people would solve any sort of issues like this within a couple of days. Right?
Yeah, no, I agree. And sorry, before we even get to the ramifications on that end, there's still a few material points that I think we need to cover, and they're important for you guys to perhaps disclose. So you guys did this. It was very fruitful. You separated. I'm sure you guys were excited. Card Pen, you gave some indication that you knew that it was probably something that at the very least was going to get rolled back. But again, you weren't breaking. Everything that you were doing was done as intended. I think something that people probably want to know was what were the fruits of this labor? Do you guys have any like a solid number on what you were able to make in totality or an estimate? What was it that you guys were buying with the currency you were making? Can you give us some information on that?
Well, for the most of our run, we were only able to secure the scry on one member of our team, and that split 6 to 7 ways. We only really came out at the end of the day with about 3 mirrors each raw, and maybe another mirror or 2 in investments.
Okay, so I have the photo that's circulating here. Can you guys verify or whether or not this is the guild stash that you guys had? Was this all as a result of? So
this is us putting all of our currency as like a 6-7 man group together.
Right. And so was this everything that came from that, or did people have it in their sashes, or?
This is essentially everything. There may be like a couple hundred divines left over.
Okay, but nothing. I mean, like, essentially everything, and everything's dead. Like, you know, if there's one person who has 10 mirrors, that's not essentially everything. It's just for the economic breakdown at the end. Again, 200 divines not going to make a big deal, but if somebody has like 10 mirrors on them, that could have a substantial difference. This would be the bulk of everything that's large, or that's just sort of a more or less kind of thing.
It's more or less. We had a couple more vultures as well, but that's about it.
Right. Okay. And so this is what you had. Now it looks like here this is in your guild stash, right? And what ended up happening, and what was one of the reasons why I wanted to initiate this call, You guys ended up getting banned, as it were. Not to for any spoiler alerts here, but can you tell us what happened with that? How long after was that? How long after you guys started doing this did that happen? Was there something that catalyzed it? What did they say to you when that happened? How did they reach out to you? If you can share.
We got banned like about 12 hours ago. So someone on Reddit.
Well, sorry, 12 hours ago. 12 hours ago was how long after you started doing it?
Oh, that's
15.
maybe 14, 15, hours after we started doing it.
Right. Okay, so within the same day.
Yeah. So on Reddit, someone made a post about the exact strategy, and we were seeing Snap and MP's group talking about it.
Right, and that's this.
That's when we decided there's no reason to.
And that's this post that's like the number one auction song.
No, it's actually before. It's a little hidden now. I'm not sure if you can find it.
Oh, it's not the one group farmed using the div card.
No. There was a post before this.
Oh, this Imperial. Oh, another economy rooting bug. That one.
There's even before this, I think.
Okay, so there were multiple posts about this number, basically.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like 15 hours ago, just about.
Okay.
And that led to like Snap and MP's group talking about it, and us seeing them talk about it, we decided that we could come forward with like what we've done with the strategy. And I think we posted the screenshots in Sushi's chat.
Mm-hmm.
And after that, everything just ran wild.
Right. Okay. So wait.
We were banned about 4 or 5 hours after that.
Mm-hmm. In my mind, again, judging someone's intentions is always a fool's errand because you never know entirely. Whether, like, in my mind, when you guys decide to come forward, in my mind, I'm thinking, and I'm just being candid with you here, I'm thinking, okay, we're thinking we're going to get fucked. Maybe if we do something here, we'll have time to offload it somewhere, and we can maybe reduce our own sentence. But frankly, that really doesn't matter. When you're going forward with it in that light, why would you guys not have reached out to GGG directly? What was the decision to go to Sushi instead of just maybe saying something to GGG?
We thought it'd be funny.
Sorry, huh?
Yeah.
Because these are the kind of questions I'm not saying it's putting you in the hot seat, but these are the questions people are gonna ask.
We had a good time with Sushi talking about it.
Mm-hmm. And second question, part two of that question. Why didn't you come to Belton? You guys haters?
I wasn't streaming. He was too busy getting his beauty sleep.
And this is actually a very important question. Now, I know that this might put you in a compromising position, but I think this is manifestly the most important thing for you guys to answer. With respect to the currency that moved off, like, are people in your guild that were not... was everyone in your guild banned, first of all, or is it just the people that were... Actually, I guess explain that. How many of the people... like, how did they decide who to ban? Like, proximity-wise, what was the... Did they send you an email, or what was the... Like, when you found out about the ban, was it just because you couldn't log in and nothing was said, or did you get an email from GGG? Or is this something that's maybe an active discussion, so you don't want to compromise that, which is okay if that's the case?
No, we... 2 of our members, well, 3 of our members were online, and they just got insta-banned. Those were the members that eventually found us Seer and were actually running the maps.
Okay.
A few hours later, the people involved were also banned, and the guild stash was removed.
The guild stash was removed?
Yes, alongside with all the currency and items inside.
So everything that you see in this photo was removed?
Yep, everything is removed from the economy.
And how about...
No. Some of the players still have the currency. Like, I still have my currency, but I'm banned in my stash. Accordingly, before they removed it.
I think what the public at large would want to know is that if, like, let's say I was in your guild but I wasn't participating, obviously you would know what you guys were doing. I imagine you're all excited talking about a guild chat. If I were someone, I don't know who has access to your guild tabs or whatnot, but if I went in and I took 2 mirrors out of there, did GGG have any kind of backtracing to prevent that currency from existing still, or was it just they just took out the guild stash or whatever? You don't have to like name names or anything like that, but was that something that they thought through themselves, or not thought through themselves, but did they do any kind of further investigation into that? I guess, or was it just sort of the guild stash is gone? That's at the end of it.
Well, people like everyone who got banned, they took out their split like after this video. But I'd say like if they're banned, it's removed.
Right. It doesn't even matter. Like it could be one divine, and again, you don't have to name names. But the point, the point I'm asking is that if somebody, let's just refer to this as ill-gotten gains, right? Or like laundered money, whatever. You could use whatever analogy you want. You can put this through the lens of TFT too, right? Like TFT, what they do, they use their guild stash to kind of circumvent a lot of these things as well. Again, like their best physical bow, the person who crafted that, and it's still listed on TFT's website, is a banned account. But because the bow was in the guild stash, the people who actually run the guild can still mirror that bow all the time, and they infinitely get the fruits of that labor. The ill-gotten gain lasts in perpetuity. And the reason I'm asking is to not try to crucify your guild member, because I've already stated what my thoughts are with respect to how I feel about who's at fault in this situation, but more so because if GGG just says, okay, we ban their guild stash, all right, like that. I mean, that's a good thing, but I don't really think, if the intent was actually to protect the sanctity of the economy and to make sure things are on a level playing ground, it wouldn't stop there. There would be, like, they obviously have like a forensic accounting capacity to see where, like, if something were transferred between one guy, if somebody withdrew from the guild stash, like actually even your own guild stash, there's a withdrawal log, right? And so I guess my interest in asking this is to sort of gauge, how serious GGG is being about this. And I
know everyone who had a split of like mirrors were banned. We did pay some people out for buying maps and stuff, and I'm not sure if they're banned or not.
Yeah, okay. So the guild, I guess a better way of putting it, so it looks like it's in the tab called investments. Was that locked to a certain amount of... was that a thing where every single person in the guild could withdraw from it, or was it just the people that were in the...
it was like officers and...
It was everyone. It was everyone.
Okay.
It was everyone.
Everyone in the guild, or just everyone that was involved in the project?
Everyone in the guild.
Okay. So that's because that's a bit more problematic then, because then it would be harder to tell who's in on it or who's not, right? Like, from the guild that I run, which I think actually all three of you have been in at some point, like the initiate rank has access only to like the flask tab or whatever, and then the member rank can take like out like beasts or whatever, and then the officers can access like the currency and things like that. But that way, if you were to run something like that, and the people that you're saying were involved in it in a more direct sense, of course, it'd be pretty easy to tell because they'd be the ones going in and out. But if you have an entire guild, and again, this is sort of the TFT problem, and though my point is not to dog on them, is that if you have an action that is determined to be illegitimate and you kind of you filter it amongst 200 or 300 or 400 possible parties, it's like you can kind of like, you know what I mean? You're like you're spreading the blame out amongst everyone where it all of a sudden doesn't go there. And I'm not saying that as a criticism to anyone in the guild, but to me it's an untenable way to kind of react to these situations on GGG's part, right? Because where do you draw the line as to, hey, how responsible was this person or not? And I think that an interesting segue to that, and you guys pointed this out before we started, was that GGG actually did put out did you guys read this yet, the announcement that they put out?
Yeah.
Yeah, so what GGG's response was, and this was posted, 5:22, so just over an hour ago. On Monday at approximately 7:30 p.m. NZT, NZT, EST, or get out of here. We became aware of an economic abuse involving scrying and a specific scarab being used to get an excessive amount of divine orbs. Actually, that's one other little minor point that's important to point out too, and I think part of why it was sort of an alarmist reaction is that when somebody like RMTs and you shuffle currency from one person to another, that doesn't have as much of a macroeconomic impact because it's either a centralization of wealth or just a redistribution of wealth. But because the divination card that you had was actually generating 5 divines, it's almost like if like the Federal Reserve just starts printing money, right? That actually creates a base level of inflation for the currency in of itself. And because it comes from that card, that's like an organic, fresh creation. And so by the looks of it, you guys had already distributed all those divines outward. And that's like, even if they did freeze your guild stash, that's an important thing to consider is that if you look at what the contents of that guild stash are, we've got squires, mirrors, mage bloods, locks. We've got the Emperor's jewels, hate forges. Looks like we got some forbidden jewels and headhunters, right? And the original scripture thing, right? Now that means that those are being removed from the circulation supply, right? So these are actually now going to be more scarce. But if you bought all of those with divines, that means that there's now an influx of divines and there's absolutely no way that GGG is going to fault the people who sold you all of these, right? So every one of the items that is here that will be removed from the economy is now far more scarce, and then divines should now have a relatively lower value. Do you guys know in total what the value was from the entire aggregated group effort, approximately?
We probably made like 10 to 15K
in divines.
in divines.
10 to 15K in divines, and you were buying mirrors at what rate?
About 250.
250, and was that the most expensive thing of the bunch there? I would imagine it would have been, right, at the time.
Yeah, just about.
maybe
Most were a little under a mirror. Yeah.
A little under a mirror, and the original scripture. Oh, actually, I guess you got the amulets up top there too. So okay, if there's 15K divines being removed or added, and if we go look on trade, let's just take a look at the relative impact of that based on what's listed currently. Over 200 matched. Let's see, what 250, 350, 400, 500, 600, 700, 800. Okay, so the first 20 listings or so would already cover that. And is there some sort of way to tell how many are listed in total? Search Divine Orb. No, there's not, I guess. Settlers 174, online only. I guess I should probably know.
You could do something like minimum stock and see like the minimum stock of what Divine Orbs
yeah.
have, so you get the highest stock.
Yeah, I mean, just by looking at it at face value, there they have, like the first 20 listings or so in terms of if you organize it by stack size, that covered what you guys. Wait, sorry, you said 15,000 or 1,500? Oh no, 15,000. Okay, yeah, no, that's sorry, that's. Oh, you know what? I can do that breakdown at the end because that's not something I don't want to waste your guys' time. I can look at the assessment of that because again, even if they do remove that, it changes the relationship because obviously the drop rates are balanced around some sort of baseline, right? So like everything's relative. So like a divine drops for every X amount of divines, one mirror will drop. For every X amount of divines, one Heat of Chorus lock will drop. All these things are kept into a balance to like the supply demand kind of thing, right? And then there's obviously certain currency types that have a far greater sink. Right, like divines are used for meta mods. Divines are used to actually divine items. Chaos forever. We're just going up and up and up in cost. So the T17s being forced to use them, that was a great thing. Right, like mirrors. Mirrors early on in the league, the reason they don't gain their value that quickly and why they're such a good investment is because there aren't any mirror items to have them on, right? So they're just used as a speculative currency for the first week because there's no fundamental use case. What is interesting about that though is at first glance, that might be upwards of 50% of the total amount of divines in circulation. And what's interesting about that, and this actually completely contradicts the quote-unquote reporting of certain people whose names sound with, actually I don't know, go on the joke there, but certain people were insinuating that the reason why divines, for example, skyrocketed in price was because of what you guys were doing. And in reality, it would have been the opposite. Because if there were 2,000 or 3,000 divines on the market and you're putting 15,000 divines into the market, there's no reason why divines would go up from 90 chaos to 120 chaos. And so the ramifications of that from a macroeconomic perspective are actually, again, the opposite of the popular narrative at the time. But I digress on that point. So GGG froze everything here. And you said it was 6 guys in your guild that got taken off from that. Did they email you or give you any kind of contact in that, or are you waiting to hear from them still? Was there any kind of personal, not touch to it, but did they give you a reason for it or anything?
No, they did not.
They didn't. And so when you get banned, you're logged out and you can't log back in again, and that's it. There's no.
On the website, it says banned, and the reason is exploits.
And it says reason is exploit. Okay. So what I thought was interesting. Sorry, because I didn't read the second paragraph of their press release. There was that they said they are discussing the issue right now, which to me says that there's perhaps. You guys being banned was just sort of not a band-aid solution or a temporary measure, perhaps, but obviously when people are kind of calling for people's heads if they're out of office or whatever, maybe it was just something where it was just sort of to cool the tides, to make like to restore faith in the overall economy. Sorry, can someone link me the GGG post again, or where did that go? Did you guys post it in the group here?
I believe so.
Oh, you did. There it is. Okay. Visit site. Yeah. So the second paragraph of this was, we immediately generated a list of everyone who had done this combination, and while there were a few accounts that had run an instance set up this way just once, there was a group of 4 people. Shout out to the boys. All belonging to the same guild that had run around 250 instances this way. They were working with a guild of 12. And they're working with a guild of 12. So I got to ask this personally, because you guys said your guild's about 25 and the group is about 6. Is this just poor reporting on their part, or is this referring to a different group of people? Presumably it's not.
I'm not sure, because our guild's not 12 people. It was like 9 to 10, I think. Yeah.
We had 9 and 2 of them did like nothing.
Oh, maybe are they saying like is 12 people perhaps the amount of people that would have logged in the time period that's in question, or?
We only have 9 people in our guild total.
Okay, so I'm wondering where that value would come from then.
Yeah.
Anyways, I guess that's just sort of semantics, but we've locked all the wealth generated from this. There we go. Okay, so this is a lie then. This is what you guys. So I didn't even read this before. So this is a bold-faced lie. We have locked all the wealth generated from this. And again, I'm not trying to crucify anything that you just said, but this is obviously showing a disingenuous press release here, which again makes me further believe that this is a PR move and not one that's really with due consideration for the economy. Because you guys had specifically said there are some people who have currency generated from it that are still, free-wheeling, right? Now, I'm not saying that's unjustly so, but that obviously directly contradicts what they're saying right here.
I don't believe that's accurate.
Yeah, maybe like less than 1% of what we made is like out.
Yeah, oh, no, I'm not saying this to criticize what you're saying, but I'm saying the fact that they're saying we have locked all the wealth generated from this, when you read a statement like that as a regular user, what that says to you is GGG is on the ball to make sure that this is not going to impact the economy in any grander way, right? And even if it is just the 1%, if GGG has like the forensic accounting capacity to see where every single one of those things goes, right? It's like this to me seems like something that is meant to restore the faith in the economy at large, and not necessarily a sincere determination on their part to stamp out the issue. And I think really at the core, that's what the problem is with a lot of these things, right? Is that, and I thought, I actually said this to you guys before we started, that I thought that we should do this ASAP, because unfortunately what seems to be the biggest determining factor in a lot of these situations is like public sentiment. And that absolutely shouldn't be the case. And like, obviously, while I agree with you guys in this situation, people are fickle, right? And if there isn't, again, a universal set of like code of conduct or rules to fall back on, the fact that people can love you one day, hate you the next day. Some people might think you're, a brilliant strategist, and other people might think you're a dirty, exploiting cheat. And frankly, I think the community is pretty split on these things usually. I can't imagine how, and even actually Sir Gog said this, to give him credit, which is not something I would do very frequently. But when I watched his video, he didn't even factor in, like, to him it was such an absurd thing that they would ban you. He didn't even put that as an option. I don't know if you guys watched his video, but what he actually suggested was that they send your currency tabs to standard and they give you demigods for helping to discover the bug for them. And I don't want to go on a tirade of how little I think of his abilities as a player, but at the same time, the fact that somebody who is like the anthropomorphized version of like what I would perceive to be a casual sort of go with the wind guy, that his first thought is these guys are actually doing a service to the game and they should be rewarded for it by GGG. That is pretty reflective, I think. Like, he's obviously, sometimes I can get a little, the way that I view things as like a quote unquote hardcore player is maybe not reflective of the community at large. Whereas somebody like Sir Gog would probably espouse the views held by a lot more of the more casual player base. And what I think is meaningful for that is that these kinds of situations are usually split between people that, I'm sure you guys have kind of experienced this. There's a lot of people that feel like PoE kind of comes at them and the game's being taken over by, the people who play 14 hours a day, and then it's too inaccessible for casuals. And then there's people who are kind of more in my camp and probably your guys' camp too, where it's like, the game's about min-maxing. We want to push it as hard as we can. You know, that's like the role of the player. And usually when these kind of situations unfold, there's a split between those two groups where the people who are more casual say these people are exploiting, ban, and the people who are more hardcore say, no, like they're playing the game the way that all of us play the game, which is to try and be as strong as possible. And what I think is unique about this is that this is one of the first times I've ever actually seen there be kind of like some bipartisanship between those two groups, and being like, this is clearly like something that was unintended, but this is clearly something where the fault lies with one party. And I haven't seen anyone direct that fault or assign that fault to you guys. And that's interesting when we come to the last sentence of the paragraph here, which is, we will be making a determination on what to do about detailing our specific policies on this at a later time. Determination of what to do about detailing our specific policies on this at a later time. So, okay.
Oddly phrased sentence.
It's an oddly phrased sentence because when they say we're going to make a determination of what to do, when I first read that at first glance, I was thinking that maybe that banning you guys was a temporary measure where they're going to go, meet up and discuss things. And perhaps like what I was thinking would have made the most sense is that at the beginning of a league, having 15,000 divines, if that's 50% of the entire divine total in the economy, that's a disproportionate impact. Whereas like if you ban you guys for 2 weeks, for example, even if they did give that currency back to you, at that point there's so much currency in circulation, the proportionate impact of that currency would be much smaller, right? So I was thinking that they could do something like that, or what Sir Gog, again, it hurts me to say this, but what he said was not a terrible idea either, where it's just like maybe again you send the guild stash to like the standard or whatever, and it's not accessible to the end of the league, because again at the end of the day you did point out a bug or an unintended interaction in their own system, right? Like I know there's like certain hackers get paid for that, to like find vulnerabilities in companies' software and stuff. It's like I feel like games have playtesters for these reasons, right? Like that is a literal job, and the fact that they haven't for the past several months been up to snuff in doing that themselves internally. I don't think that it's fair to scapegoat the people that are doing it for them, especially when the incentive structure is not like, if you're playtesting the game so that the game can be better as an employee of the company, you're doing that with the prerogative of being corporate success and wanting to have a polished product and blah blah blah. But as a player, like that is not like that you should never be playing a game like this and be thinking in the back of your mind, I wonder if GGG is going to like this. I wonder if there's any ramifications for me. It's like the game should be designed in a way where the player can figure out as many systems as possible to make themselves as strong as possible. And if GGG fucks up, maybe they hotfix it, maybe they roll it back. I know rolling back is something that people have brought up as well. I don't know how you guys feel about this. I've never seen them roll anything back in a league actively before. And my concern was that it would probably actually have a worse... I don't know if you can... Maybe one of you might know this more specifically, but can you roll something back in a targeted fashion? Like, can I roll back your stash, but not roll back the entire game stash at that same time? Because if so, that would seem like a fairly simple solution. But if it's a thing where you have to... If you have to roll...
Yeah.
If you have to roll back an entire fucking... Like, let's say it was 4 p.m. today that you did it. You have to roll back the entire game to 4 p.m. Of course, that's something that would be out of the question, right?
I'm pretty sure none of us really spent the currency we made yet after we split, so if they really wanted to, they could just delete the currency. I can't speak for everyone.
Yeah, it's again, like, looking at this, again, I think I've made clear my thoughts for each one of you individually are on the situation, but looking at it from a more withdrawn perspective for the game at large, and I'm sure in this exact moment it's hard for you guys to have much consideration for the well-being of the game at large, because, to your guys' credit, it seems like you're being pretty mature about this. I would be on a fucking self-righteous, sanctimonious crusade right now if I were in your position. But perhaps that's just because I'm less mature than you guys, so kudos for that. But, looking at the game at large, like this is... The reason this keeps happening is because they keep deferring the responsibility. They keep, not setting these guidelines. And so if you look, the final line here says, we'll be making a determination of what to do about detailing our specific policies on this later at a time. So when I first heard that, when I said what to do, I thought that was in reference to you, but it sounds like this is just them determining whether or not they should have a clear-cut policy. And if that's all that they're saying here, that is like the Kim Cheadle of fucking design solutions. Like that is just so unacceptable. We're gonna consider fixing the problem that's presented itself 5 times in the past five months and has caused large swaths of our player base to quit because they're disillusioned. Like, to me, that's such an absurd sentence. If that's what it means.
Bizarre.
But to say we're going to think about whether or not we should consider changing our policies or creating a policy, like maybe it's just worded weirdly by someone who's maybe got not the best grasp of the language, but we are making a determination on what to do about detailing our policies at a later time. We're making a determination on what to do about detailing. So a determination on whether or not they're going to tell the players what their policies are.
Yeah.
What the fuck? It's like how are you supposed to know? How are you supposed to know? Like that's like never putting a law into like drafting a bill, not putting a law into public, like in the public arena, not telling lawyers, not telling judges, just being like, yeah, we're going to determine whether or not we let you guys know if this is illegal sometime. You'll know if we arrest you while you're walking on the street or not. Actually, sir, it turns out that we made wearing pink on Tuesdays illegal. It's tough luck there, pal. Like that is just a very bizarre sentence to me, and I think that there should certainly be some consideration given to you guys as well. And for what it's worth, hopefully the result of this will again, I don't know what's going to happen with you guys, and every single time something like this has happened, I've advocated on behalf of getting rid of the people who are creating the issues in that. This is a turn on that, and it has nothing to do with the fact that I've known you previously. I again believe that it is manifestly unfair, not only because you guys were doing nothing else, like nothing that was unintended, but B, and perhaps this is a greater case for you guys as individuals, is that point to me one precedent where they banned somebody who did something you just did. Last league, when they didn't ban people, they allowed the currency to stay as well. And so what leg do you have to stand on there? If your concern is the economy of the game, then why wasn't that your concern last league? If you could freeze the guild sash this league, why didn't you freeze the currency last league? Right? If you let them stay last league, why aren't you letting them stay this league? And like those conflicting messages back and forth, and then to follow that up with something as absurd as this, that just doesn't make sense to me. And I love GGG, and I support 99.9% of what they do, but their stance on this sort of stuff and on like RMT and their inaction in enforcing that is perhaps, I think, the greatest weakness of their company, and it has been one that in my mind has plagued their like the not the sanctity of it, but like the trust you have in the institution. You know what I mean? It's like if people feel like the game is fair and balanced, or at least they have an equality of opportunity to something, and like the interests of the players are being represented, they can, if they make a mistake, you can kind of get past it. But when you see something like this happening 4, 5, 6 times and in as many months, and the only discussion that they're having at this point is whether or not they should detail the actual rules and whether or not they exist to us, I think as a player that cares about this game, and I'm not even one of the ones that gets banned, that is unacceptable. Especially when there's a new product coming out and this league is such a big thing, and this is such terrible timing too, right? Like with all this positive sentiment going around. But so I guess at this point, I'm sorry that this has taken so long. As you guys probably know, I'm not brief. But do you guys have any like coming out of this? How do you like? I would be absolutely devastated because I put so much time and effort in, and I know all 3 of you care about this game to an extent. This is a weird thing for me to ask because I usually don't give a shit about these things. But how do you guys feel? Like what's going through your heads? Are you in shock a little bit? Are you upset? Are you sad? Are you angry? Or how are you? How have you been taking this?
I'm profoundly disappointed and devastated.
Yeah.
The time, the characters, my items, MTX, stuff like that. If we don't get those back, I would be heartbroken.
Yeah. And I think one of the difficult things in this position too, and it's a different situation, but I remember with like the TFT thing, it's like when you advocate for yourself in a situation, even if you believe with 100% totality that you are in the right, the harder you push for yourself, the more it seems like you're guilty, right? Like trying to forcefully tell someone why you're not in the wrong, and that was part of the reason why I wanted to have this recording here with you guys, because especially when narratives get taken over by an environment greater than yourself, especially if it's one that you're detached from. And I'm not trying to shit on specific content creators or whatever, but when there's people who play the PoE for 11 days every 3.5, 4 months that don't have anything to do with the end game and have never owned a mirror, if those are the people creating the narrative around why it is that you guys did this and whether or not you're good or you're bad, or assigning these sort of anthropomorphized, human values to a situation that just is, I think that those are the times where things, they spiral out of control because they're not rooted in reality. And I sincerely hope that people watching this would, whether or not you agree with it, would at least have some consideration for the fact that, or some compassion for the fact about how you would feel. Like in Brahman, I can almost hear it in your voice. Like, I'm thinking if that had happened to me, like I would devastated, wouldn't even cut it. And they didn't reach out to you guys at all, or provide you an opportunity to submit a ticket or anything like that.
No communication yet. We can appeal the ban just through the website.
Right. Okay. I'm for what it's worth, and I'm going to write GGG an email, let them know what my thoughts are on this. Not that that's going to do anything, but I've been doing it on the opposite end of things for 2 years now, and I very strongly believe that this is a situation where, at most, if it were me, you guys would have either a half league or a full league ban. Remember what they did with Empyrean back in, I think it was Ultimatum. I think they got rid of them for either the league or for the one. If they're trying to send a message, fine. Just with respect to people not trying to push it to that degree. I don't know. You guys said that the numbers they're reporting here are not accurate with respect to your the amount of people in your guild and whatever. So I don't know if 250 instances is accurate or not. If that is accurate, and it doesn't matter whether it is or not, you don't have to answer that. Obviously, doing something to that extent, you would know what you were doing there, right? And so I at the very most, I could understand them being like, nah, you know what, you found something that you knew was probably detrimental to the sanctity of the league, so you're not going to participate in this league anymore. But at the same time, like a permanent ban should be for breaking terms of service, not for finding a clever use of game mechanics that they overlooked, right? The damage you caused, by my mind, is in this league, and maybe this is an important league or whatever, right? But I think to take that and blow it up as if you have had this master plan that has gone against rules that they're not even willing, like they're considering letting us know what those rules are. To me, it's like that in of itself is almost like a get out of jail free card, right? Because if you're determining whether or not we should give us details about what the specific rules are, then how can you ban someone for breaking the rules if you're openly admitting that you haven't even told us what they are yet? Like it's the logic of it is so circular, and I actually feel so terrible that this has happened. I mean, again, I do think you guys were smart enough to know what you were doing was shitty, but again, everything about this kind of rubs me the wrong way. I'm glad that the currency has been removed from the market. At no point do I think you should ever have access to that again. If you guys were told that you couldn't play for the rest of the league, I wouldn't shed a tear for you. But I think to have you guys permanently banned without an email, without any kind of discussion about it, without and it just, I don't know. This leaves like a sour taste in my mouth. Twitch chat, what do you guys think about this? I'm curious to get some thoughts or reactions here. Let's see what Twitch is saying here. Perma's too long. League long ban. This is bad. Black Morgan. There's no quality control. I hope it's temp. It's clearly not intended. Very clearly. 1,000 divines on day 1 or 2 of the league is no. I've made the total amount of money that they've made. I've made 10 times that in a single day before. I did it through legitimate means and through mirror services, but it would have had the same economic impact. The point is, you're either breaking a rule or if you're not breaking a rule. And if there's no clearly set rule, the outcome shouldn't be the determining factor on whether or not a rule is broken. It's like, did you break the rule? Yes or no. remove group play and this won't happen. I don't think that has any bearing on this. Again, the league long ban thing I don't disagree with. And again, I'm obviously empathetic to this situation on your guys' part because what's really telling to me, again, because I've reported on people RMTing and stuff for so long. We even had a guy build a API tracker through Obsidian that tracked banned accounts and the transfer of items, right? So it had like hundreds of thousands of transactions and like the different accounts that were touching banned items like that were made from banned accounts. They would grow in size. It was like an incredibly detailed forensic accounting of trade and PoE and how like pervasive RMTing is. And like the one thing that was universal on those is the burner accounts because PoE is a free-to-play game. When people are intentionally breaking rules, they do it on accounts that don't have supporter packages, that don't have currency tabs, that don't like people. I can't remember which one of you. I think it was Desi. People don't go on a game that they've played for 8 years and thousands of hours, and go and do something that they think is going to get permanently banned. Especially when the exact same thing happened 4 months ago and nothing happened, and that was 3 times over.
I agree.
And again, everyone's welcome to their own views on this. But if you do feel like these guys should be permanently banned, and maybe I'm even going to throw up a poll here. Again, please don't feel like you have to agree with me or agree with the consensus here. In fact, I would encourage you to vocalize if you do disagree. But what I would have to say though is that if you do believe they should be banned, how do you rectify that with the fact that it happened 4 times last league and none of them were banned? Not only that, they didn't even remove the currency that came from it. So how do you rectify those two positions? What do you think the appropriate response would be? Ban perma, ban league, no ban, remove $, no ban, no remove money, other. Let's see what chat's thinking. Twitch chat, in case you're just listening here, guys, there's a poll up. Love to get your guys' thoughts on this. Are you guys? I'm not sure. The guys on Discord, do you guys have my stream up right now?
Yeah, we do.
Oh, there was the first one there. I was going to say there were 45 votes and not a single one was for permaban. So there's a very clear trend here, which is that it's 51% are saying that you should be banned for the league and 40% are saying no ban, but the currency should all be removed. And then there's 6% on no ban and you got to keep the money, and only 4% for a permanent ban. So to me, the most absurd thing would be no ban and you keep the money. But the fact that there's more people that voted for that than permaban, I think speaks to the heavy-handedness of doing that. And again, I'd like to remind people that the fact that this happened to you guys is directly to my benefit. Individually, because if you did have that currency and you had mentioned you guys had started buying vultures, and I know you were in my guild at one point, which does mean you've been touched by the goat, which means you do have some understanding of crafting at least, if by no other reason through symbiosis. That would have been a legitimate threat to me. Like that would have been something that was very, very scary for me to try and deal with. But still, I think personal prerogative shouldn't override principles, especially with something like this where the way that they've decided to act on this over the past 2 leagues, in very many ways, has dictated the course, like the direction of those leagues, right? And I think last league that was one of, if not the greatest, one of the greatest contributing factors to why it was the lowest retained league of all time. People feeling like they were being left behind and not giving clear messaging on this kind of stuff. And it saddens me to see that they are choosing to go down that road again. So I don't know if this brings you any comfort in saying this, but my chat is critical of me when I get a guildmate of mine to go buy beasts for me, even if I give him the currency. They tend to be quite apologist for the more casual side of things. So the fact that the least voted thing was to permanent ban hopefully speaks to the fact that you guys aren't unjustly casting aspersions on the treatment you've received. I do apologize for taking up so much of your guys' time here. I don't have any more questions, I think, myself. Do you guys mind answering a couple questions from chat if they have any?
Sure.
Sure, yeah.
Does anyone in chat have any questions? If you do, can you just do @Belton PoE so I can read them to them? Well, the post isn't just saying that they're unclear. The post is saying that they're going to have a meeting to discuss whether or not they should tell us what the rules are. It's not them admitting that they're unclear. It's that they're going to have a meeting to discuss whether or not they should tell us what they are. If you were the one to discover it, would you do? Abuse it, make a YouTube video, or insta email GGG? I would make a YouTube video about it immediately, and I would probably email GGG as well. But that's also because my livelihood, to an extent, is inextricably tied to me playing PoE, right? And so for me, the advantage of currency from a league, like even if I had a 5% chance in my mind that there might be action on my account, the opportunity cost of that would not be worth it, right? Because there's different considerations that I would have. What actions are they taking? These folks got banned. That's not a question for them, guys. If you're gonna tag me, can you? It's a question for the guys in the chat here. At what point in any time did you think to yourself, hey, maybe we should tell GGB about this? So that's for them. So Sir Free for All asks, at any point in time did you think to yourselves, hey, maybe we should contact GGG to let them know about this?
For that, our thought process was basically thinking about what happened last league, and exploit early, exploit often. If you find a bug, this is not a bug. It's if you find an interaction that's making a lot of currency, we should be making as much as we can before GG.
Oh, is that why you went to sushi? Because that's how a lot of people found out about the.
Yeah, we linked to sushi. Yeah.
Oh, and then that was why. Okay, so with the 6 link on the shield thing, I made a YouTube video about it, but Sushi's obviously a much larger audience than I did, and he was doing it on live stream. Okay, so that's why you went to sushi. Okay, that makes sense. I see. But I mean, that's almost more telling, right? Is that your first thought was to do what was historically presented to you, and that proves the point. Is that they set precedent in terms of how players should conduct themselves in the future. The reason why you went and told Sushi and didn't go through an official channel is because last league, that's what people did with 0 repercussions. If they set clear rules in place, or the people that did do that to Sushi and they banned them, I can assure you that your first action would not have been to go tell Sushi. Or if they said, hey, in the future, if we find out that you have found out an exploit, and rather than contacting the company, your first reaction is to tell people at large so they can go exploit it, you'll be banned. That's not a very hard press release to put out. And again, I mean, the fact that you just said what you said is proving that point manifest.
We thought we founded something like a rogue exile meat sacks strategy, right? And we wanted to run that while we could, because historically they will nerf those types of things.
Right.
And we wanted currency, of course, to make juicy builds and play the game and have fun.
Yeah, of course. I mean, everyone, you should always operate under the assumption that people are going to act in their self-interest, right? The whole point of these games is that people want to get better. Now, sometimes you can have an intersection between self-interest, like when I do memories or when I do mirror crafts, where it's obviously, if I'm getting somebody to come help me on something, it's not like I'm ever going to prioritize their well-being over mine. But at the same time, if they're, let's say, getting a 6 out of 10 performance right now, if I offer them something that gives them a 7 out of 10, we're both benefiting, even though I might be benefiting greater, right? But at no time does anyone ever sit there being like, I want to go from a 6 to a 4. Yeah. And to expect players to act like that, again, I think is just in contravention to, is the antithesis of what these games represent. Okay, the next question for you guys is, I wonder why they farm so much. Are they making builds that cost a lot? Are they crafters, or do they just like to hoard on standard? I guess that was kind of what he just answered, was you just want to make fun builds, currency. I mean, currency is freedom in PoE. That would be my answer to it. It doesn't really matter. If you have infinite currency, you basically have infinite opportunity. You don't have to sit there and pob every single thing out to hammer out the details. You can go play test it. If you want to craft, you can go craft. If you want to use that Hina Cores log to make it perfect, you can. You know what I mean? If you want to go mirror it, you can. And I mean, currency should always be utilitarian, but there's no greater vehicle to freedom in PoE than currency. So not to speak for you guys, but I think
the coolest thing is to make currency and build a strong character. That's what the game's about.
Mm-hmm.
Some people wanted to gamble. Some people wanted to make a build. Some people just want to craft items. It's like there's everything you can actually answer to that.
Yeah.
We just run more for more.
What I can attest to for these guys, because I vet people that get involved to some extent, as I mentioned at the beginning of this interview, they're no longer associated with the guild or any of the projects I do, but in the past they all have been, and I'm pretty anal about, like, if somebody comes in with an unascended character that doesn't have a guild stash and is like, hey Belton, I want to give you 10 mirrors for your project, I'm not going to take that shit. In fact, actually that happened last week. If you guys remember, some guy tried to buy a 35 mirror quiver and he didn't have a currency tab. But I can tell you, in case what you were implying was, did they want to make the currency to RMT it? That's not these guys' alley.
That absolutely not.
Yeah. It would have been like first of all, their accounts are all several years old, but I know I'm not to air any of you guys out, but they're not destined, like they are well grounded individuals with employment and just a passion for the game that perhaps is limited by their free time sometimes, and currency can obviously bypass that. That would be my perception of it, at least, not to speak for you.
That's a fair assessment.
Yeah. All right, so the next question is how much planning went into figuring out this mechanic existed? They covered that at the beginning of the video, so I'll post this when it's done, but I won't make them answer that again. Is there any next question? I understand you weren't breaking the rules or exploiting. Okay, sorry. For the guys on the call, I understand that you weren't breaking rules or exploiting, but did you not think that at all that this is way too strong and 100% an unintended mechanic? We probably shouldn't do this?
I thought some of the stuff last week was unintended or too strong as well, but people did it and they got away with it, and it wasn't like they didn't abuse it. They actually did it for like multiple days, and everything was fine.
Right.
Yeah,
so it's
our experience here paralleled last league essentially. That's what we thought.
Yeah. So I guess for you guys, and I think it's it's perhaps a more pragmatic approach and a less of an idealistic one, but it's the same thing that happened in California when they got rid of they raised the petty theft thing, right? It's like, oh, we're gonna do this. It's idealistic. We don't want people to go to jail for stealing things. And what's the end result of it? People go and smash and grab all the department stores, right? When GGG says, okay, we're not going to punish anyone for doing this, then it's nice to think in an idealistic world that if a situation like that pops up again, that everyone's going to sit there and say, gee golly, I'm going to prioritize every other person in the league and the sanctity and the trust and faith people have in the economic system. I'm going to do that over like the excitement that I've found for doing something that can give me a competitive advantage. Like, sure, in this utopian, idealistic world, maybe people would do that, but that's just, I think it's a naive way to approach things. And, unless you were perhaps like a content creator whose livelihood was attached to playing the game, whereby like you would never risk losing your account, I think that 99.9% of people, if they're given that option, especially when the messaging from GGG is, hey, if you do this, there's no punishment, because it's not like that was just one time. It's like 6 times in a row they've done that. I think most people would be like, as the mantra has seemingly been, abuse early, abuse often. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the mechanic was pretty well defined. It was advertised in their live stream, and I think we used it as it was intended to be used.
Yeah. Yeah, somebody says this means they want to make up rules on the fly and hide behind them to ban people unjustly for their oversights and lack of testing this mechanic. It seems like GG got caught with egg on their face and is embarrassed. Something that could break the economy fell through, testing in the cracks in a sense. Yeah, that's like basically a summary of how I felt about it as well, and why I thought having this conversation with these guys was actually very important, because a lot of the most popular PoE content is the most heavily sensationalized, where it'll be, hey, this is going to, and then break will be in 5 capital letters, break the league, and then forever in all capital letters. and it'll be somebody who hasn't even played the league yet, talking about how the economy's ruined forever, and speaking with these platitudes and misassigning like certain value systems to things, and talking about how like evil and insidious the group are, and meanwhile that narrative becomes pervasive in like the overall the overall
sentiment.
Yeah, the overall sentiment, the overall dialogue around that historical event, like history's written by the victors kind of thing. It's like, I like, for example, not to keep drawing back to the TFT thing, but I remember when I did an interview with Rutu, and people were presented with all the stuff that had been gathered over the months, and like 5,000 people came to my stream and were like, dude, we're sorry, like we believe you, blah, 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 you were right. Nothing had changed from what I had been presenting for a year and a half. It was the fact that they banned the PoE designer, that everyone was like, oh wait, Belton's actually right. And it's like, literally not a single fucking thing I said changed in that whole time. It was just that people all of a sudden was like, oh, this is the straw that broke the camel's back, right? And I mean, eventually the truth will weigh out in these situations. But when you allow, not that we have control over GGG, but to some extent as the player base we do, right? Like when people demand better, GGG has shown that even if it's something that they are like in dire opposition to, like implementing the currency market, right? That was always something they never ever wanted to do. But eventually they just said, hey, guess what? It's 2024 and we can't get away with the same thinking that we did. And the fact that this has happened, again, if this were the first time this happened and it never happened before, I'd say off with your guys' heads. But the fact that this has happened 5 times in the past like 4.5 months, and 4 of those times they acted the exact same way, and 4 of those times they refused to give any clarity or to provide any clear guidelines on what or what not constitutes that. And then this 5th time, they decide not only to take away the currency, which is something they had never done before, but to permanently ban you, which is something they've never done before. Again, things like this, which are, again, I have this chest still. Not only was the chest not removed, but the person who made 50 of them, he's still in the game. Last league, I made 20 of the fucking 6-link things on the 3 socket ones. And in fact, I didn't want to become the scapegoat. So the first thing I did was make 2 YouTube videos about them, 4 minutes long, so even the ADHD people would watch them. And I try to give it to as many people as possible. Because if 10,000 people have them, guess what? They can't just be like, oh, Belton he was a lone actor and blah, 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 blah. Right? And the fact that was my first thought, I think, is fairly indicative of how they've handled these situations in the past. And I say this as somebody who, like, I love GGG. I love this game. I've dedicated a large portion of my life to it. And so this isn't like a criticism born of like, fuck GGG mentality. It's like, this has just been one of these things that has been, I think, plaguing their corporate governance for so long. And I can't for the life of me understand why they are being so stubborn about clarifying things like this. Like the fact that we got a trade site before we got a clear rule on GGG's part of what constitutes an exploit is insane.
Remember a few leagues ago they wanted to increase transparency.
Mm-hmm. Like this line to here actually, like it borders on the absurd. We will be making a determination of what to do about detailing our specific policies. Now, it's not we're going to be making a determination of what to do. It's we're going to make a determination about what we should detail about our policies. Meaning, we're not determining whether or not we should have a policy. It's we have a policy. We're going to decide whether or not we should tell you what that policy is. So how can you permanently ban people when this has become an issue that has arisen like a handful of
lines in the sand?
Yeah, I mean, but it's not like this is like once in a blue moon. This has happened 5 times in the past 5 months, and 4 of those times in a row you did the exact same thing. You removed the thing, you didn't ban the person, and you let the reward stay in the game. And this sentence here is them directly admitting to the fact that the only thing they're considering at this moment is to tell us whether or not what the rule is. But
what are the parameters?
Yeah, well, look, we're going to make a determination on what we should detail about our specific policies. If you don't have a specific policy, then how can you ban somebody for breaking a specific policy? That is where the hypocrisy is so manifest. It just logically is not conducive. How can you both be saying? How can you both be saying that we're going to decide whether or not we should tell you what the rules are, but we're also going to ban you for breaking a rule? It's like an Ouroboros of logic. It's actually hurting my brain trying to think about how someone can hold those 2 stances at the same time.
they probably want to maintain the right to ban as they see fit when they feel it's appropriate, I suppose.
But then again, then that's what I'm saying too, which is a problem because
Sure.
Historically, them banning as they see fit it becomes a lynch mob situation, because it becomes what the biggest public outcry is, and the problem
Sensationalism sells.
yeah, but the people who have the largest audiences on these topics are usually some of the least qualified people to speak to them, right? Like let's see here, YouTube.
More strong or stronger.
What's the what was the card called again? Scryer?
But it's yeah.
Nameless Seer Scry, SCRY, I believe, or SCRYE.
Exploit 3.25. Let's see. Exploit 3.25 PoE. The Fubgun exploit drama. Okay, by Tripolar Bear. Empyrean has a video on it. No Context Ray Class has a video on it. Sir Gog has a video on it. Tripolar, Talkative Try has a video on it. I don't know how this fucking the YouTube algorithm is so strange. Like me searching up exploit for PoE and it starts showing me Elon Musk videos.
Nice.
But yeah, I mean the here, like what's the take on this?
Reddit ablaze with a brand new exploit. Not as bad as it was in Necropolis, but as you can see on the screenshot, it is still kind of bad. This is not the Kurek X8 Reddit sleuth, and see that he was in another stuff, but somebody on day. I understand why there's not, because then you're supposed to record this video, maybe a few more, and it got snipped really early. So this one.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if there's more of those here. In fact, the Sir Gog one I thought was one of the most telling because, again,
check that out.
Well,
I talking to Try's video for a few minutes, but then I hop on the call.
yeah, I mean, you can see like this one has 33,000 views in 11 hours. Sir Gog has an audience of 40,000 people, and honestly, his takes in this are not that bad. But at the same time, I need you to look.
Can you address the inflation?
Yeah, I can address the inflation thing. But at the same time, and I implore anyone who watches this in the future to do this exact search because it's public. You can go through here and see every character that this person's ever had and the level of every character this person's had. This isn't the person who should be driving the discussion about 100 mirrors and how this is going to impact the macro economy of the game when his highest level character has about 6 Divines of Gear on it and about level 97. I'm not even sure if he has a single level 100. And again, I'm not saying that I know people play this game to different amounts. It's just you have to qualify the opinions of like different people have different areas of expertise. I would never tell Ben how to run a race. You know what I mean? And I think that having a situation like this that can have such a large impact on the game. And again, I actually don't think his takes are too bad here. But here, like this here, like his title is, "Yep, this caused all that inflation." That's just patently false. As I pointed out, the one thing, since you guys transacted Divines, you're actually flooding the supply of Divines, which would reduce their value. And in the video, one of the first things that he points out is trying to show the fact that the increase in Divine price was correlated to you guys doing that, and that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And then PoE Antiquary, for example, the reason why the Divine price went up is first of all the Sunday of the opening weekend. That is always a phenomenon that occurs because the opening weekend is obviously when people play the most, or the most excited. And then the shift between Prime EU and North American hours to when like the Asiatic and Oceanic hours come on. There's always like intra-daily cycles like that. And there's the lower player numbers when like the Korean, Australian hours. And plus, like, you know, the first 3 or 4 days of the league, there's always a massive ramp up in inflation. Okay, Ancestor, add Necropolis, add Affliction, add Crucible, add
And
All
that's
right.
why there's always the idea to buy divines day 1, day 2 as early as you can, because they always appreciate.
Yeah, I mean, like, yeah, I mean, that's at the core, yes. I mean, that isn't where I would specifically suggest people buy, because there's better holders.
Yeah, I'm saying like.
Yeah, but in theory. But my point being, if you look right here, guys, this is the past 5 leagues. If you look at someone saying, okay, this is a unique phenomenon caused by the fact that these guys are doing this. The league is on, we're on, so Friday, Saturday, Sunday, but this is the 4th day of the league, right? So the league started on day 0 and day 4. Day 4, 110 chaos.
Hey, Belton, I gotta go soon. If we could just wrap this up.
Yeah, no problem. Sorry, Brahman just asked me to point out the inflation thing.
That's good.
And the price of divines right now is $115 chaos, which is literally the exact same that it has been for the past 5 leagues at this exact day. Again, as I pointed out, it wouldn't have that inflationary measure too. But again, when people point out the ramifications of this in that kind of sensationalist and sort of dramatized way, without giving consideration for things that you can easily look up, historical data, not only does it paint an incorrect picture, but people start getting worried about things for the wrong reasons, right? Like, I do think there are legitimate discussions and potentially bad things that can happen as a result of a situation like this. But people pointing to, what was it that you guys said, total 15,000 divines as being something that is going to ruin the league for everybody when there's 500,000 people playing, is just a patently false statement. And if people are sitting there thinking that this is, the boogeyman, when it really poses no threat to them, or at least it's not the threat that they should be focused on, I think that does a disservice to the narrative that should be developing around it. I apologize for holding you guys for so long. Thank you very much to all of you for taking the time to talk with us about me. Sorry, can you say it again? It was echoing.
Oh, it's always nice chatting with you, man.
Yeah, no, likewise, guys. It was I know perhaps it might have seemed like this was like an opportunist thing on my part. It's I'm actually not even going to edit this thing together. I'm not super concerned about how successful the video is. I just thought it was incredibly important that, and again, in my opinion, was not even a bad Sir Gog video necessarily, but to know that the narrative surrounding this was so, like the basal points were so out of line with what reality is, and to know that your intentions and your, like, to be presented as a malicious actor without being able to speak for yourself, I thought it's just, again, manifestly unfair. And knowing, like, finding out that it was you guys and knowing that I had spoken to you in the past, it just, you didn't strike me as people that, like, like, I don't know how to articulate that well, but I just thought that you guys should have the opportunity to at least say what happened, and people can draw their opinions from that and perhaps have some context given from somebody who has, again, maybe more of a focus on the economy side of things. So I appreciate you guys taking the time here. I'm sure people on Twitch chat appreciate it as well. There's obviously a lot more viewers here than when I was yelling at people and calling them retards, so that's surprising. But hopefully I'm going to post this right away, and I'll let people discuss it, and they can come to their conclusions there. But I really do hope that this, at the very least, has some material change. And as I said, I'm going to be writing an email to GGG and letting them know my thoughts on this, irrespective of any of that, because I do think that this is a situation where, whether or not you're being treated fairly from like a grander scheme of things, you can't apply rules to one group of people and then not. I mean, like, Fubgun's a streamer and he's a popular streamer. But him showing that to such a broad audience, and the fact he didn't have his currency taken away from him, he didn't get banned, and he showed it to hundreds of people, and he made 10 mirrors in one day, right? Yeah. That's and that was literally just a couple of months ago. I don't know how you can go from that and then say that you guys are in a worse position, in particular because what you're doing was just, like, you didn't exploit anything. It was just an oversight in their design decisions.
We were using the mechanic as it was intended to be used.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, and you know, I didn't want to come into this trying to paint like a sympathetic picture to you so much, as I just thought it was important for people to have at least an objective and fairly balanced perspective to approach this too. Because again, as I said, had you guys been allowed to stay in the league and keep that currency, it would have fucked me probably more than anything else. And I will be honest in the fact that a little part of me smiled when I found out you guys were banned because of like the personal threat that was averted as a result. But knowing the stance I've taken on these things when it was TFT in the past or when it was the six link thing, I thought that it would be just too hypocritical for me to not give you the same fair shake. So hopefully as a result of this conversation, something positive happens. Thank you very much for taking the time. And I wish you guys the best. And thank you for speaking to me.
Thanks, Belton. Yeah, thanks for having us on.
All right. Cheers, boys.
Appreciate you.
Yeah.
Have a good one, man.
Take care, lads. All right. Okay, for the YouTube video, this is what, hour and 55 minutes. Honestly, I'm not going to bother editing this. I'm sure not many people are going to watch to the end here, but if you did, throw a like, throw a sub, whatever, YouTube creator stuff. Let me know what your thoughts are on this. I think this is obviously going to be a fairly contentious topic, and this is not bubble wrapped into an 8-minute video, but it's an important thing to discuss. So if anyone for some reason is still watching this an hour and 55 minutes later and you do have something that you want to articulate, feel free to use the comment section as the forum post. I will not ban anyone. And if you don't agree with the things I said, and if you feel angrily, strongly about that, and you want to use strong language, go ahead. I speak my mind, and you should feel free to do the same. All right, people on YouTube, God bless. Take care. See you next time. Ciao.